Brace yourselves, we're documenting a custom finish Les Paul Custom that I have never seen before. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. I'm really pumped for this one because it just happens to be my two favorite colors blent onto one 1980 Gibson Les Paul Custom. That's right, it's green. Is there a more perfect St. Paddy's Day episode? I think not. And yes, this is factory. The story of this one's quite fascinating. It first showed up on a Facebook group on March 1st of 2025, where a guy who was claiming to be the original owner was just curious, what color is this? I've owned it since 1980, and I've never seen another one like it. So I sent him a private message and I said, hey man, I think that might actually be holly green. And I shared him some photos of other known holly green examples, which just happened to be part of the Lysic collection. If you have not found his Flying V website yet, I don't know what you're doing. That guy has some amazing Flying Vs. Please check him out. Because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have even known holly green was a custom color in 1980. Because when you talk about the new finishes of the era, usually people think of Goldburst, Silverburst, Candy Apple Red, Pearl White, All Gold, Ferrari Red, Night Violet, Blue Silverburst, you know, things along those lines. But unfortunately, my message did not reach him because it just went to his spam. Thanks, Facebook. That's how it goes all the time. But there were a lot of guys hypothesizing a few different hues that this could be, such as Bahama Blue, Pelham Blue that's aged, Inverness Green, or maybe Gibson was taking a page out of Gretsch's book with Cadillac Green. Because here's the thing, blue guitars do in fact age green once the clear coat yellows. So sometimes it can be hard to tell on an older guitar, did it start life green or is it actually blue and then aged? I got some more photos and I saw this and I was like, huh, is it Bahama Blue after all? Because we do have a little bit of blue showing here. But look at a really worn Silverburst neck. Sometimes you have to remember that there are base coats. Same thing like what we were talking about on the Candy Apple Red Les Paul Custom. So what we're seeing here could actually indeed just be a slightly more blue base coat to the finish, rather than necessarily just a clear coat rub through. Because if you look right here where there's a chip in the lacquer, you can see that same bluish green hue. And that's present in all the locations. But speaking of Jeff's collection, I actually reached out to him to see if I could get an up-close photo of his holly green, and he sent me this photo of his Flying V. And based on this, I think we can actually rule out holly green, but I don't think it's Bahama Blue either. The original owner claims that this started life green and has not changed significantly in color over the years. And as proof of that, he actually has an old Polaroid of one of his bandmates playing this guitar all the way back in 1982, where you can certainly tell that's more of a green hue rather than Bahama Blue, but that's just really cool that we still have this old photo. And he included this original as case candy for me, as well as our original Nashville style bridge. But now you might have just noticed this is a very blatantly stamped factory second guitar. What does that mean? Well, that means there was a cosmetic blemish on this guitar from the factory and they sold it off at a discount. Sometimes employees would nab them up, but he said the reason why this one was a second is brand new. It had a 2-inch line running across the seam of our top. Now, over the years, it has grown to completely span all the way to the bridge pickup cavity. So that's just the top slightly coming apart. And you can tell that versus a crack because of how perfectly straight it is. But did you notice something else about this? It's stamped as a Kalamazoo guitar. You can tell that by your vertical Made in USA stamp, as well as the last 3 digits being 499 or less. So we've got a Kalamazoo built Les Paul Custom. Those are few and far between the closer you get to their closing. From the original owner in a custom color with a fun story about why it's a factory second instead of just guessing. And he gigged this thing heavily for years before he retired it. But did it survive its shipping trip to me? Kind of. Like, it's got its original case. These aren't the best in the world. The only thing that got damaged is our switch tip. It was blown to smithereens. It's funny, you can see small pieces of it scattered about. But thankfully there's 3 big pieces that maybe, just maybe, I can glue back together. But let's go ahead and get our leprechaun friend over onto our workbench. And as a bonus, now I introduce you to Randy. Here's a interview with the original owner with his tale of the guitar.
Hello. I spent 4 hours watching your live stream the other night. I watched the whole thing.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. So, in your own words, tell us the story of this guitar.
Was hanging on the wall at Ray Kettner's guitar shop in Madison, Wisconsin. His motto was, "The cat's what's plays goes to Ray's." And I bought most of my Gibsons from Ray. But it hung on the wall down there. And I've always told people that she bought that for me for my 18th birthday, but it must have been my 19th birthday because that guitar was built October 24th of 80. So I must have got it like just before April of 81. But it was on the wall at his shop from the time it was new until I got it. No, and I was the first one to own it. And at that time, Les Pauls were going for about $1,200, and I know that one was half price. She paid $600 for it. Was told at the time that it was a one-of-a-kind color, and I've always said that and known that, and I've never been able to find another one that color.
Was it always green? Are you 100% sure about that?
Absolutely. That is the color it was when I got it. It's always been a green that you can't put a name on. It's not olive green, it's not forest green, it's not green, it's not emerald green. It's actually closer to a Kelly green than anything else. And it's always been that weird green. I've seen Bahama Blue guitars. When I posted on the Gibson forum, anytime anybody said the Bahama Blue Inverness green, it was never that color. Never. It was always the green that you see when you look at it. Maybe a little brighter, but it was always green.
That's definitely good to know, but whatever green this is, it has to have had a blue base coat.
Yeah, you can see that on the neck. But there, too, where you see that blue, that guitar, to me, it was never that color, that blue color, never. I think the guy, they knew it was going to be a second or something, and they just dumped a bunch of paint together in the custom shop, and he shot it on there. Because that was a Friday guitar. I'm going to find the guy who painted it. He's the only one that knows. It's never been refinished or painted or none of that. Like even where it's stamped second on the back of the head. Originally, that looked worse than what the flaw did, why it was a second.
Was the finish always chipped around the second stamping?
Yes.
What about the chipping by the tuner? Was that always there too?
That it happened. That key has been out because I had to straighten it. At one time, band practice at home, I had a drum riser and I broke a string on that guitar. I set it up on the stand and I grabbed I think I had my Explorer at that time, grabbed that, and I was leaning down by my amp, tuning, and I stood up and swung around and knocked that guitar right off the stand. And it came down and it actually hit a ceramic bong that was sitting behind our guitar speakers. That's how it got the first chip in the corner of the headstock, and it bent that tuner. Mm-hmm. And when I took it off, that little chunk of paint fell out, and I straightened the tuner and put it back in. That chip was not there, but it was always, where it said second, always looked chipped up like that from the day it was new.
That center seam line, you said it was only about 2 inches long when you first had it?
If even that, maybe 1.5 inches, and it just looked like a little line, and you couldn't grab it with your fingernail, you couldn't nothing when I first got it. And that's what Ray said is why it was a second, was because of that mark. But you hardly even notice it. And for many years, little by little, it got longer and longer and longer, and finally went the whole way.
Did it start at the top or the bottom?
The bottom, back by the strap lock. Those diamond locks went on there. The top key that got bent and that corner that got nicked, the bottom one, that was actually the first damage. If you look on the body, on the side, down by the control knobs, there's like a weird looking spot. The strap had fallen off and the guitar went straight down. That's how it got the nick on the other side of the headstock and that little impression on the bottom of the body. And I bought those diamond locks. Within the first couple weeks of owning it, I used to go by Ray's shop quite a bit. I hung out there a little bit. So, he brought those on. Oh, you need some of these? And, oh, yeah, I do. Because I was tired of it falling out of the strap.
A fine choice indeed. Next, there's a strange yellowing by that center seam. Is there any story behind that? Did you ever have like a MIDI pickup?
There's never been anything stuck to the front of that. The only thing I could think that would be from is the case rubbing on it. I don't know what else would have caused that. It never stayed out on a stand in the sunlight either. It's always went right back in the case. I never just left it on a stand.
Was there any smoking in the house?
Oh, yeah,
the bars
absolutely. I smoked for years. Sure, some of that's attributed to that, but there again, the guitar never really sat out. It never sat in a window, and it's lived most of its life in the case. If I wasn't playing it, it was in the case.
Let's dive into a little bit of history about you. What did you use this for?
Started playing when I was like 15, and we practiced a lot. My basement had a full band set up in it. That band, which was called Oracle, or that, Rush, that band probably only played out maybe 3 times. When I wrote June 82 on that picture, I'm beginning to think that was also June of 81. Because the Silverburst V that I was playing was an 81, and I had just got it. That's why the other guy in the band was playing the Les Paul. He only had this crappy thing that he had, so I let him play the Les Paul, and I played the Flying V because I had just got it like the day before. Flying V I only had for about 2 weeks. I didn't like it. It fed back really bad, but in hindsight, I think it was the amp. I wound up trading that one for another cheap Gibson with a bolt-on neck that I gave to that other guy who I was letting play it. But then the band after that I had was called Six Deep. And of course you had SYX, because everybody was using Ys back then. That band played out quite a bit, and I used that guitar very little. So I had my Explorer then, and that thing weighed nothing. I used the Les Paul one night at the Over and Under Bar and Grill. And I do have a picture of me playing that. I think there's only one because I only played it for the first set. And then you got to switch back to something else. A couple of pictures of me playing at another bar that's since burned down. Those would have been from about 82. A band I had in like 07 called the Window Lickers. And I used that guitar for one song. I had it tuned to an open A, and I used to do an old Savoy Brown tune, Tell Mama. And I'd use a slide on that guitar. But other than that, I think I used it one time at a jam a few years after that, and it's been pretty much in the case.
So as far as notable gigs with that particular guitar, we've covered it then.
Do you know who Clyde Stubblefield is? He was James Brown's drummer, the funky drummer.
Yep.
I played with him at our local bar. He came and sat in with us when we had the Bad Randies. That band lasted 10 years. I was actually born to be a drummer, but when I was 15, my mom's like, well, why don't you get a guitar? My dad was a guitar player, a country, big into Hank Williams. My name is Randall. I'm named after Hank Williams Jr. And I named my son after Jimmy Page. And I'm in now. It's called One Shot Wally. I've been in this band now for 4 years. We've probably done 125 gigs. Got a whole summer lined up for this summer. I do like playing drums because, once you got it, you really don't have to practice much. So that works out well for me. That's about the story on it. And I don't know, I joined that Gibson Facebook group and decided to put up a picture. Has anybody ever seen one this color? And yeah, that had like 800 reactions, and of course I pulled you out of the weeds. I wasn't necessarily looking to sell it, but I've always felt that guitar belonged in a museum or with some collector who knows what it is. Most people, it's just a weird green guitar. I didn't want to just go to another guitar player who was going to play it every night, so I decided to let it go to you. I got married in the early 80s to another woman and kind of got out of the band business. And through the 90s, at one point I was living, after I got actually divorced, I was living with the girl that bought that guitar, and pretty much all I had was my clothes, that guitar, and a little crate amp. And that went on for probably 3 years through the 90s. The way it played, it's one of the nicest playing guitars. In '07, when we were in the Window Lickers, a Marshall amp and a stack type speaker cabinet, and that guitar through that amp, it was just butter. It was the nicest sounding thing you ever heard. Other guy in the Bad Randies, he just loved it. He thought that was the sweetest sounding thing he'd ever heard was that guitar through that amp. There's actually a local guy who played in a lot of bands. He frequented Ray Kettner's shop and saw that guitar, and then all of a sudden it was gone. He wanted it, and he found out that I had it. And every time I've run into him over the next 40 years, he'll be, hey, you still got that green Les Paul? Yeah. You want to sell it? No. Oh, okay. And off he'd go. And that happened at least 4 times in 40 years. When he sees me, he remembers, you're the guy with the green Les Paul. Yeah, actually, Ray Kettner is actually still alive. He's got to be 80. You might remember the guitar, but there was always a lot of talk about that guitar even after it was gone. He may remember the old green Les Paul. And he's the kind of guy who'd ask you, oh, if you could have any guitar, what would you want? Oh, I'd like a black and white Explorer with gold hardware. Next time I go in there, he's like, open that case. It's like, you asshole. And that's how I wound up with that. And I never should have got rid of that guitar. I still know where that one is, too, but I traded it for a an interior. When I do frame-off restorations on cars, Edsels mostly. I've got 3 of those now. And I traded it for my first Edsel. I traded it to the upholstery shop for the interior back in 1985. And the family member of that upholstery shop still has that guitar and will not sell it back to me. His cousin took it and played in a band and went all over the world with it, so that one's gone. I really liked it, though. It was light, so I couldn't play that Les Paul for 3 sets. The thing was weighed way too much. Anybody that knows the connection of that guitar and me over the years, my mom, my sisters, the girlfriend, they're all gone. So now I just look at it and all that comes back to me, and it was time to move it on. I told him, that drummer I told you that called me yesterday from one of my first bands, I said, yeah, I just sold the Les Paul. He goes, the green one? No way.
So you'll love the way it played and sound, but it sounds like it was more so the mystery of the finish and the notoriety of it that it gave you with your peers, and everybody was being drawn to it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Everybody I've ever known in my life knows that I had that guitar, the funky green guitar. And I've never seen another one like it. Anytime I pulled that out when we do a jam or something, all the other guitar players would be, whoa, what is that? And they'd never seen anything like it.
So at the end of the day, did we solve the mystery as to what green this is? No. It might just be some funky one-off thing like the music store initially said. But whatever it is, it's a cool custom hue Les Paul custom. And that's good enough in my book. This one was a 4-hour deep clean, but we live streamed it and had some fun. But we did end up finding a few interesting things. There's a crack in the top. Now, whether that happened in shipping or not, I'm not entirely too sure. Because once you put your poker chip back on, you can just barely even see it, but that was hiding underneath all the dirt and gunk. That's why it's important to clean your guitars. It helps you see everything. But taking the poker chip off was fantastic because we can actually see the original finish underneath it that was shaded, so it hasn't yellowed as much. But since we already have this giant seam line separation right here, finding a crack wasn't that big of a deal. But I was personally curious, just how deep is this? Can you run your fingernail along it and feel it? Yes. However, you can't really get it in there. But looking in our pickup cavity, we can confirm that is indeed our 2-piece center seam. And overall, the separation is very shallow. The joining of the pieces was way tighter up here. But another reason why this one might have been a factory second is look over here. Our wood got chipped out over on the side. But thankfully, we still have enough room to use it. As far as our pickups, they're completely stock. These are very late era T-tops, both marked April 22nd of 1980. And I get readings of 7.44 k ohms in the bridge position, the neck 7.46, and the middle position, just for fun, 373. Oh, did you notice I had some mild success gluing it back together? I'm not sure how long that'll last, or if I can even take it off again, but it's on there. I try to put the uglier side over here, that way I don't have to see it while playing. But as far as our pickup cavities, that's another great area to see the original green finish. Because once again, this area has the yellowed clear coat over top of it, which makes it appear an even darker green, whereas this is the original kind of bluish green. I've had Bahama Blue before, and it's a much more striking blue, but it is kind of similar. But in this lighting situation, I'm seeing something else. We've got the maple top with the maple pancake layer before our mahogany body. But that doesn't mean you'll have this one. That stops around 1976 and transitions away. This one I'm still documenting examples to see exactly when it passed, because that layer lingers on for quite some time. But if you were hoping for markings, no. Nothing of the sort in either of our pickup cavities, but cool to see inside here nonetheless. The pickup cover's cleaned up quite nicely. Still has a lot of patina to it, but it's clean now. And don't worry, the bridge pickup still has some of that natural greening to it as well, but is much cleaner. The only other crazy surprise we had was this particular screw was completely stripped out. So we had some fun on the live stream trying to get that thing out. I will be replacing that one with a correct modern style. Shout out to Randy's LLC. He sent me a care package like a year ago. It's finally coming in handy. But oh my goodness, I think I might have just found another reason why this one is a factory second. Normally a bridge is quite crooked, you just don't notice it. But this one seems to be more so than usual. I typically don't notice it when the bridge is off, but check that out with a straight edge. That is super noticeable. But when it came to me, it had this roller bridge on it, if you remember correctly. I went ahead and cleaned up the original bridge. It's not in the best of shape. It's slightly collapsed, but for the original look, I'm going to go ahead and put it back on. Certainly matches the vibe of the bridge pickup. And now our tailpiece, most of the gold was already worn off the top, but at least you still have it on the edges, and it's super shiny and blingy on the back. But now our pickguard, if you notice, it has also shielded the finish, so even if you take the pickguard off, you still kind of have a green guard on it. But here's what that looks like itself. It's got lots of scratches and some wear to the gold up here on our bracket, but is original to the instrument. And of course we have the bracket ding and some beautifully aged speed knobs. Technically they're yellow numbers from the aging of the plastic, but it works really well with the green, makes them look more green. And an additional thing on the tailpiece, it actually utilizes sustain sisters. So that's an additional brass block around it. If you look closely, you can actually see the finish has yellowed around it. That's because there's a little rubber piece and that reacts with the nitro. Not super noticeable on a green guitar, however, natural, yeah, that'll definitely show. But something to know about a 1980 Les Paul Custom, which is kind of cool that we have the seam line showing here, is typically those will be 3 pieces. So there's definitely something special going on with this one having a 2-piece center seam. Although if we want to get super critical, I think it's just ever so slightly off center, but it's very close. The whole carved top situation definitely plays tricks on your eyes. So not only cool custom color, but also 2-piece center seam. But that's just a regular mahogany body on here with our maple neck and our ebony fretboard. I was successful in getting all the finger cheese off of it, and the board cleaned up beautifully, and we conditioned it, and we revealed the true condition of the frets, no more corrosion. The original owner was telling me that you might have to do some fret leveling, etc. We definitely have some wear. Could you level recrown? Sure, but it might just be time to refret it. Because about through the 12th fret, you have significant wear. However, in cleaning it, I noticed a few of the nibs have just naturally chipped off, so I wouldn't feel that bad refretting this particular guitar. But I think I would only do that if this plays like a dog at this point. I'm hoping and pretty optimistic that it won't, though. It should be alright. Being Kalamazoo produced, it's actually a dark red tortoiseshell color side marker inlay. It's just hard to see because they're so dark, but that also makes them slightly larger. But the red and green work well together. And now our measurements, 1.69 inches at the nut, 2.05 at the 12th. Quite skinny, 0.8 first fret neck depth, 0.97 by the 12th, and 0.94 at the 10th. It's just your typical Norland era 60s style neck here, and then it chunks up a little bit towards up here, but not a lot. Here's a look at that neck profile, 1st fret, 12th fret. That really seems quite rounded right there, but then it flattens out just a little bit towards the top. And it looks like we're rocking a 12-inch fretboard radius, and the Gibson 24 3/4 inch scale. But now, moving on to the headstock, you'll notice, hey, where'd our tuners go? I took those off for ease of cleaning, as well as another area where we could see the original finish exposed on the backside. But here we can see our maple neck, as well as the initials of the person who originally filed the frets at the factory. Looks like maybe AG, and thankfully our rod's in perfect shape. We still have the outline of the cover there, as well as our original cover here, which is definitely yellowed with age and has some scratches. And we were talking about this in the live stream too. There's a very minuscule separation right here on the binding where a little piece of red felt from the case has been stuck in between. Let's see if we can get that out now. Success! But before we flip on to the backside, might as well appreciate our blocky Gibson logo and our heavily yellowed custom emblem right there. Moving on to the backside, we definitely have some players' wear here as well. However, thankfully, nothing like completely chewing through the finish or anything, just a whole bunch of buckle worming essentially. But there was a shielding tin present, so once you remove that, it revealed that the original owner was not lying. Completely stock, untouched wiring here, dating to the 27th week of 1980. Looks like about the same here. Looks like the 11th week of 80, and matching down here too. But this is another area where you can see where the finish was shielded from the yellowing clear coat. It really doesn't look too different, but unfortunately no additional markings from employees or anything like that. But we do have a golden output jack plate, diamond posi lock strap locks. Well, the closest thing to a strap lock that they had at that time from Gibson. And just for fun, here's our toggle switch cavity route as well. As far as that pancake layer we saw earlier, you're not going to be able to see it because our thick binding in the cutaway covers over that spot. But here's a look at our green and yellow sides. Looks like we got some sort of an impression over here on the edge too. I was able to get all that gunk out of our neck pocket too. But there's a few other dings on this side as well. But moving up the back side of the neck, you can see some marring right there, another impression. wear down through to our base coat, which, to be fair, on the neck, the finish is a little bit more discolored, but sweat and other factors play into that, into super yellowing it. But taking those tuners off, you can really see the original hue right there, because this looks significantly different from what we're seeing here. So there has to be some base coat shenanigans with this color. But here we can see our very prominent second stamp. For some reason, we also got some finish chipping from that, as well as our vertical Made in USA stamp telling us Kalamazoo, as we were talking about earlier. And our full serial number is 82980074. So pretty late in the year 1980. And of course, we got some nicks and dings up along the top, as well as some additional finish chips right here. Of which, unfortunately, this guitar was just slightly too early for the flip-out windings. So this is just the regular Schaller M6 style. But they're gold, and I was able to clean those up quite nicely. Here she is, all put back together. So, I figured out what he was talking about by this not playing perfectly. It's really buzzy about past the 7th fret for your lower 2 strings. Like to the point where they don't even ring out that much. Now, can you raise your bridge really high to make it a little bit better? Yes, but the rest of the guitar plays fantastically. It's perfect for your top 4 strings, and that's where most people will be anyway. And it's good enough in your chording area, so I'm just gonna leave it alone. But now, as far as the Blacklight Test, everything is glowing beautifully here. If you look closely on the top, you can see that there's some light discoloration in this area. But you've got a sweat absorption area there. Knobs are looking perfect. Nothing to complain about here on the front. Our headstock is also beautiful and even. Just a little bit of rub right here on the corner. And during the live stream, we did the Blacklight Test when all the other parts were off. It's kind of funny how they glow so differently just because they were shaded. But now moving on to the backside, more of the same. Just a little bit of sweat absorption here from Solos. And yep, now that I got the dirt out of there, it glows perfectly. All looking good on this edge too. We were certainly already expecting some finish wear on the neck, but this really helps show you the true extent of it. His hand really rubbed along the treble side more so than the bass. And thankfully, no breaks, cracks, or repairs on this one. It is peachy. These New Orleans are known for being heavy. This one's about average, 10 pounds, 3 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how it sounds. Really dig that neck pickup. It's very woody sounding. Versus that bridge pickup. As usual, T-tops do not disappoint. However, I will say I think this suffers from a little bit of intonation issues simply because of the fret wear, because some spots are a little bit lower. Like, I don't get a lot of buzzing in this area, but you can definitely tell some of those chords just don't quite sound right. No matter how many times you tune the thing. And then, as I was telling you earlier, not the best up there on the low strings, but the high ones are pretty good. I could raise the action to get rid of all the buzz, but it's so comfortable. Now we'll kick on the dirt. This has a really nice tone to it. I guess the best way to describe it is transparent. It's not muddy. It sings well through the amp. So there we go, an exceedingly rare green Les Paul Custom documented. Thank you, Randy, for selling me your old guitar. I know you've got a lot of memories in this, and whether sentimental or not, I'm really glad I get to be the next caretaker of this one because I've got a cool collection of custom colors. Here's a little St. Patrick's Day treat for you guys. I pulled them all out. You can see them side by side. That's not a photo you get to see every day. Now, as far as playability, could it be better? Yes, but it's far from the worst guitar I've ever played. I don't think I will personally be refretting it or anything, unless all of a sudden I decide to go out on tour and I need a 100% playing example. But if you happen to also own a green Les Paul Custom, feel free to reach out. I would love to see if there's actually more of these. Because when he purchased this, he was told it was a one-off. However, being a factory second, it makes you think maybe there was a small run of these and this one's just messed up, or maybe this is why it got the fancy color, because they were trying to hide some of the other things that were wrong with it, and maybe somebody would look past it because of the color like I am. But either way, Troglodytes, I hope you have a great St. Patrick's Day and you enjoy your newfound guitar knowledge, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.